Hey folks, it's Nate, and today I'm going to show you guys how to remove and reinstall the transmission out of a 2005 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited. Alright, so anyone who's been following along knows from a couple videos I've published and the GoFundMe that I recently closed that the transmission in my LJ died. At this point I've already got the transmission replaced, but I took a bunch of footage while I was doing it, and I'm going to show you guys roughly step by step how to make it happen. There's a couple gotchas. If you've never done a transmission before, there's some things that are going to be completely new to you that you wouldn't know about, and I hope that this video can help you out. If you like what I do here, please remember to like and subscribe, and if you want to support me monetarily, you can do so through Patreon, at least until the day comes when YouTube starts paying me, which is 1,000 subscribers. So you can benefit me without spending a penny simply by hitting the subscribe button at the bottom of this video. So, alright, let's get into it. So first of all, if you're in a situation where you're looking at replacing your transmission, which could be why you're watching this video, you've got a couple choices to make. One, what do you want to do to replace the transmission? You want to go to a junkyard and pull out a new transmission or a used transmission? Do you want to buy a rebuilt transmission? Or do you want to rebuild your existing transmission? Personally, I chose to go the rebuilt route. And that comes with a couple other choices, but I'll get to them in a second. You could go to a junkyard and pull a 42 RLE, which is in the 2005 LJ. Actually, it's like, I don't know when they start. I want to say it's not too many years before 05. It might be like 03 or 04. The 42 RLE shows up in the TJ. And it goes all the way up into like the 2012 JK. So this could be relevant to you JK owners, but not quite, because the whole underside of the JK is different than it is in the TJ. So take that for what it's worth. All right, so you can go to a junkyard, look for a model year that had the 42 RLE, take it out, bring it home, put it in your Jeep. In my opinion, that's a crapshoot, because you don't know what the transmission has been through. You got no real way of telling if it shifts clean and if any of that is in good working order. And you don't know how well it was taken care of, right? Some junkyards have sort of a guarantee where if you install the thing, it doesn't work, you can take it back to them. But personally, I would rather not install a transmission just to find that it doesn't work, pull it back out and take it back. Plus, this thing is my daily driver at the moment. As I've mentioned, I've sold the Patriot, so I got to depend on this thing every day. So I need the swap to be as quick and reliable as possible, and I need to be able to depend on the vehicle for at least the next couple of years before I'm ready to start looking at cars again. So, to me, the best options were get this transmission rebuilt or get a rebuilt transmission. So I went to a transmission shop and said, hey, what'll it cost to rebuild this transmission? And his response immediately was, we don't touch those. Apparently the 42 RLE is a bit of a finicky beast. And unless you are a professional shop who does nothing but rebuild transmissions, like places like Jasper Engines, or other places that specialize in do nothing but rebuild transmissions all day long, it's hard for them to warranty the things well enough. So he says, I don't rebuild those, sorry. And from what I was reading online, most people that did get them rebuilt got them done for between $2,000 and $2,500. The Jasper rebuild that I bought was $2,700. Why on earth would I have my existing transmission rebuilt for $2,500 when I can spend $2,700 and get a whole new unit with a warranty? So, as I've alluded to, I went with a rebuilt transmission. I got it from Jasper. There's a couple other places that make rebuilt transmissions. I checked Advance Auto. They have two different manufacturers. I looked into both of them, and they have horrible reviews. There's a performance diesel place out in Colorado called ATS Diesel, which everybody and their brother told me I should go to get the transmission. The problem is, again, I was looking at their reviews online. So they have basically a performance rebuilt 42 RLE. And it supposedly improves fluid flow, which improves cooling, which improves this and which improves that, and they have a shift kit in it and all these other cool things, which sounded like a really great idea for what I do with my Jeep. They say that they're built for towing and for off-road. So I was all ready to buy that. and I started doing some research into ATS Diesel. They have a 5-year, 500,000 mile warranty, which sounds awesome. To me, that basically means 5-year, right? 500,000 miles, you're going to put 100,000 miles a year on a Jeep? Maybe. Maybe you will. I don't. I put about between 15 and 20,000 on my Jeep a year. Jasper has a 3-year, 100,000 mile, which is really right in the range where I'm going to be. In fact, that's still overkill for what I do. But anyway, point is, what good is a warranty if you can't get service done? So ATS Diesel, from what I read online, again, I have nothing against ATS Diesel. I have no personal experience. The problem is I couldn't find anyone who did. I found a couple people who had installed the transmissions, and they say they work great. What I was worried about was warranty, right? Jasper, you can go to any authorized Jasper authorized mechanic in the entire United States, and you can get warranty work done on a Jasper. ATS Diesel has to be go to your mechanic, get it diagnosed, contact ATS Diesel, and they might not approve it. Maybe they're great about approving it. I don't know. What I was reading online on Yelp and a couple other places is that they're not. Their customer service wasn't great. Again, I'm not saying that you should shy away from ATS Diesel. Maybe I am completely off base. My point is, for my use case and for my comfort level, I wanted a name that I recognized, which Jasper's been around forever, and that had a nation-to-nation warranty. You can see Jasper signs at like any mechanic in any little town across the entire United States. So, to me, it seemed like a better choice. If I wasn't depending on this thing every single day, I probably would have bought the ATS Diesel. It sounds like a great product, sounds like a great idea. The price is even better than the Jasper, except you have to consider freight and your core charge. But at the end of the day, the warranty was the thing that worried me. Sounds great on paper. Maybe it's an awesome warranty. You should do your own research. I'm not telling you not to. I'm telling you that you should look into it. Maybe even call ATS Diesel and say, hey, look, I found some bad reviews. I was in a hurry. Jasper could get me a transmission in a day. The warranty was there. The support was there. The name was there. I went with Jasper. So, I'm going to get into the install now, and you guys just sit back and relax and watch me make a fool of myself. Okay, sorry for the probably terrible camera work in this video, but I am underneath the Jeep trying to get some quick video recorded while I'm working on taking out my transmission. So I'm trying to remove the 42 RLE from my Jeep. That guy. First things first, I need to get the drivetrain all disconnected, which I've already done most of, and get the belly pan off. I did not record any of that, but it's pretty simple. Basically, there's 6 bolts that hold the belly pan up to the bottom of the Jeep. Those come out. You got to support the transmission by underneath the belly pan. With the auto transmission, there's also a skid plate that covers this, and that bolts onto these. But as you can see, they rusted free, so that's a bad thing. I basically had to cut those off, and I'm not going to put them back in because, well, they suck. I'm going to get a different skid plate to cover from the, this is about where the belly pan is, from the belly pan up to underneath the engine. I'll do another video on that at some point. So basically my next task, well here, I'll show you what I've done so far. You can see there's no rear drive shaft. Basically those bolts, those straps, you take them off, and then this right here, I don't know if you can see that, the light's probably making a terrible glare. This strap on the outside of this boot, if you don't have a slip yoke eliminator, that's factory, you have to basically make some space in that. It's not adjustable. I just put a screwdriver in it and stretched it a little bit, and then I popped out the tail shaft, and then the rear drive shaft's out. The front drive shaft bolts to this yoke, and that's where the CV style dual cardan yoke bolts up, which you can see in my drive shaft video, the drive shaft replacement video that I did. And then the other end, of course, is just like on the rear axle, on the front axle there. So here's a better look at the transmission. So basically this transmission is not happy. If I put it in gear, it just kind of makes grindy noises. Not good stuff. So what I need to do is drop this transmission because I have another one that I'm going to order. And when I order that, they're going to want this back as a core. So I'm basically going to drain all the fluid out of it, drop it out of here, pull off whatever it is that I get to keep, which I'm going to have to find that out. And then this goes back to them, and I get... man, there's lots of things attached to this. Anyway, and I get a new transmission. So I'm going to have to figure out what gets disconnected from where and how. There's lots of plugs and things on here. My goal tonight is to get the transfer case off. Let me lay my light down. Oh right, the other thing I've taken off already, you see where these nice shiny bolts are. Mud, yay! That's where the transmission mount was. It goes on basically on the tail housing of the transmission. If you've ever heard of the SWBCrawler, SWBCrawler replaces this rear piece of the tail housing. This piece here, see there's bolts here, they unbolt, this comes out. Anyway, to get the transfer case off, basically these bolts, I think there's 9 of them if I remember. I don't remember exactly, might be 8. I think they're 9/16. Those have to come off, and then the transfer case just slides off. It looks like, gotta get this off of here, that's for the shifter linkage. Gotta get this off of here, which will come off with these bolts. Shouldn't be a problem. Another plug here that I didn't get yet. That's probably like the shift indicator light maybe, I don't know. And I'm going to have to go around the top of this and see if there's anything else connected that I don't know about. But this has to come off of here. Looks like it should be relatively easy. Yeah. So that's what I'm going to work on tonight. Try to get this transfer case off tonight. And then I can move on to the transmission. I got a friend that's going to come up and help me with the transmission because he's done transmissions before. Probably going to have to get a transmission jack or something. But, yeah. That looks like it's the shift linkage, I think. I really don't know. I guess it's cable actuated. I've never really looked too deeply into these transmissions. I'm learning a lot about them since this one went funny. So, yeah. What are those, adjusters or something? I don't know. Little hex-headed somethings. So, yeah, that's my work for this weekend. I want to try to get this transmission and transfer case out of here by the end of the weekend. Wish me luck. Okay, so first things first, I had to bring the transmission and the transfer case down a bit to give me some clearance. See how low it's all hanging now? I took out, so this is transfer case linkage here, and that's in the way. Obviously it's got to come off to get the transfer case out. This goes to this here. You can see it got a little bit beat up on the way out, but I basically put a screwdriver between this and here and pried. Got that to pop out. These looked like they were studs with nuts on them. What they actually are is bolts. Very odd bolts. Maybe that is supposed to be a stud, now that I look at it. I think it is. It just came out all in one piece. But basically they were through here. They held this bracket on here. That's part of the transfer case linkage. I got both of them out. I had to lower the transmission considerably to get up there. I was able to use a small 3/8 ratchet with a 9/16 socket on it to get up there and get them out. So that's step one. Next I'm going to get the breather hose off of here. Just pinch this and then this should pop off. It's going to be fun, I guarantee. And then I think that's everything. I disconnected this plug. There's another one on the back. Here it is. This one is for the speedometer. This one I think is the four-wheel drive indicator. which has never worked anyway. And then I think that's all the cables. I think these are all attached to the transmission then, so that'll be next. That'll be dealt with once I get the transfer case out of the way. I have also already drained all the fluid out of the transfer case. So, okay, moving on. Okay, transfer case is out. Yay! There were 6, I think, maybe 7. You see some of them, the studs came out, some of them, just the nuts came off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Number 6 total. One around the outside of that tail housing right there. Once I got that out, I basically put the jack underneath it, lifted it up a little bit, wiggled it off. Kind of fun to get off alone, but that transfer case, NP231J, is not terribly heavy. I probably could have just sat under there and lifted it off, but I didn't want to risk dropping something heavy on my head. It's not fun. So now I'm moving on to this. See if I can get the light to cooperate. Here maybe? It's going to fall off of there. It's just going to blind everybody. Alright, so I'll just lay it on the ground. Maybe you can see. Alright, so this I already pulled off. This is the shifter cable. That was on there. I just popped it off. This arm here I think is the shifter for the transmission. Right? There's a number of plugs and whatnot on here that need to come off. And they're all covered in grease and oil. I'm working on that. This here, this thing, is what holds the cable for the shifter on. There's a bolt top and bottom. I was just starting to work on those when I thought I better record a little bit of video. I'm going to drain this soon because it still has fluid in it, and I figure no sense having the extra weight. This thing's going to be danged heavy enough already. I'm going to wait to drop it until I have a helper or a transmission jack. So yeah, this has to get unplugged. It's a sensor. All these cables got to get pulled off of here as far as I know. So these are all little ties here. You see, I'll have to either cut them or pop them out. I think these should pop out of here with a screwdriver. And then I'll get them out of the way. Unplug these things. There's one here. These are the transmission cooler lines. Now I don't have an auxiliary that's a hard word to say, aux external cooler, but these go up to the radiator. Jeep at least did that. These 2 lines go up to a reservoir on the radiator so that when you're driving and things are flowing through the transmission, your fluid will go through here and it's supposed to get cooled off at the radiator. I'd like to add an extra cooler. Oh, geez, there's so much mud on here from years of off-road. Anyway, I'd love to get an extra cooler, put it in line, but that may not be in the budget yet. So anyway, these 2 lines are going to have to come off. This is just the cable. That'll come off when this comes off. That'll be out of the way. These plugs. I think that's everything. I haven't looked at the other side of the transmission yet. The exhaust is over there. I'm hoping there's not a whole lot to do on that side, otherwise it's going to be a pain in the butt. I still don't know what these are for. Maybe I'll clean it up once I get it out of there and look at those and figure out what they are. Looks like when I put this in, I over-tightened this gasket. Look at that, it's all pushing out. I'll have to keep that in mind when I put the new transmission in. Anyway, yeah, that's what I'm up against. I just thought I'd give you guys a quick update. And I'm going to get back to taking some of this stuff off. I don't think I'm going to do much more tonight. I'm having problems with my shoulder, and I think I'm about at my limit for now. But I'm going to try to get this off at least. Maybe start working on some of these plugs and things, because that shouldn't bother my shoulder too much. Alright. Just wanted to share something as I'm pulling the transmission out. I pulled off, there's 2 sensors on the side. I had pulled the pan down before to drain the fluid out, replace the filter, put new fluid in, see if that had somehow helped the transmission. I found a bunch of brass in the pan. No steel though. So I thought, okay, maybe the transmission's not nearly as bad as I thought. Still, I'm replacing the whole unit, so it doesn't really matter. So I pulled out one of the sensors, which is apparently magnetic, and I found this. That, my friends, is shards of steel. There's some there. There was like a whole bunch of it stuck to that sensor. the rearward sensor on the transmission. So yeah, I mean, I kind of knew, but now I know for sure. There are shards of steel in there as well as shards of brass. So whatever, it's getting replaced. Okay folks, I just had a long day working under the Jeep. A friend of mine came up who has even more garage time than I do, working on cars and Honda Civics and whatever. But strangely enough, it applied pretty well to the Jeep work we were doing. He's been under a couple Jeeps too. Anyway, the point is, I'm trying to record a quick update. We've got the transmission out at this point. Spent most of my day Saturday, from about lunchtime until, I don't know, 6, 7 o'clock at night, getting everything disconnected and finally getting the transmission lowered and out of the Jeep. And there it is. Yeah, it looks like it's all covered in fluid. That's normal, don't worry. So I'm going to go over a few things that we had to do to get it out. So you can see it's leaking out of this port. That's one of the ports for the cooler, the transmission cooler. This is where those two sensors were. I'm probably going to replace them because I don't trust pretty much anything that came out of this transmission at this point. This, and there's another one over here, I think are the interfaces for the internal sensor pack. So those I'm pretty sure will come with the new transmission. This I think I have to pull off because that's the actual shift mechanism. That's what shifts the transmission from gear to gear. So that'll have to take out. What I want to show you though is this. So this is a torque converter. If you've ever pulled a manual transmission, this is what takes place of the clutch in an automatic transmission. Okay, so these 4 bolts that you see, these 4 holes you see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, they bolt directly to the flywheel. So it's pretty much a 100% positive connection between the torque converter and the flywheel. Those have to come out in order to drop this thing out of here, obviously. So that was a thing I wasn't aware of. But Willie, thank you Willie, knew, and he knew exactly what to do to get them out of there. But you know, once you know these things, then it's pretty easy to make sure you get them done right. So yeah, it's a good thing he was here. I wouldn't have known to do that otherwise. I guess some quick internet searching would have told me that, but whatever. Anyway, so yeah, torque converter has to come out with the transmission. That is full of fluid as well. So I believe that when I install the new transmission, I'm going to have to fill it with fluid, but I will look into that and be sure first. This is the crank position sensor, and that there's a ring on the outside of the flywheel that right there senses, you know, where the flywheel is at. So that'll have to come off of there. The new transmission won't come with that. This hole that you're looking at right there, that goes straight into the pan. That's where the fill/check tube goes, and that stayed in the Jeep, so that'll have to get reconnected as we put in the new transmission. And then lowering it out of there, well, it was pretty simple. That's how you'd lower any transmission. Basically, we took all the bolts out. Here, this right there, and then another one on this side. Those are essentially what holds the transmission to the engine. There's a shield that goes down here. Sorry, I'm using my light in a weird way. You take that shield off, and that's how you get to these to disconnect them, or to unbolt them. The starter goes here, so you got to take the starter out, take that shield off, and then these come out, and then the transmission is mostly free. At the top of the bell housing here, there are 2 inverted Torx. I guess they're not inverted Torx, they're Torx bolts that hold. One of them holds a sensor on, and they both go into the block, the engine block. So those have to come out. They're a pain in the butt to get to. Willie used a ridiculous number of extensions to get up to them, and he was able to get them right free. So cool. Again, experience, I think, is what got that done. Oh, and then there's a vent tube there. That had to come off. Easy enough, though. But yeah, there you go. There you have it. 142 RLE removed from my 2005 Jeep LJ. Next thing we're going to do is pull off the stuff we have to, get it cleaned up a little bit. I'm going to be ordering the new transmission hopefully this week. Got money lined up. And yeah, it'll be a trip to go exchange this, get my core fee back, and pick up the new transmission and bring it home. So yeah, getting close. Soon the Jeep will be back on the trails. Might be 2-3 weeks. Looking forward to it. All right, folks. I'm working on a little bit of a problem here. I've got the transmission lines disconnected, transmission out, during my transmission swap project here, and I'm trying to flush the transmission lines and the cooler, right? And the way the transmission shop suggested that I do so is to flush it using mineral spirits through the lines, right? Through one line, through the radiator, back out the other line. So I tried to do that, and it ended up just like spurting fluid everywhere. So let me show you what I'm up against. So you see, there's the inlet and the outlet line for the transmission. I took the upper line and I forced some mineral spirits into it using a compressed sprayer, and it sort of burped fluid everywhere. I was hoping it would drizzle out into my pan here. That didn't work out so well. So I tried to put a hose on the end of the bottom one. That didn't work out. Tried a few other things, and I came up with this idea. I have this bottle here for GL5 gear oil, and I have cut a hole in it. See? The bottle fits over the line here. Let me see if I can do this while holding the camera. See the line there? The bottle fits over it. There's still a little bit of gear oil in there. So what I'm going to try to do, see that? Get a better angle. What I'm going to try to do is use it kind of like a funnel, and we'll see what happens. I'm kind of proud of that. I'm going to fit that on there a little better and then try it out, and if it works, I'll show you. Alright, so I've been spraying mineral spirits through this thing. You can see now it's coming out kind of clear instead of all goopy and gummy. I think that's about what we need to do. I didn't see any chunks or anything come out of there, so that's good. He said to watch for metal. Rinse it really good if there's metal. Didn't see any. If anybody's wondering, this is what I'm using to pressurize it. Run-of-the-mill garden sprayer. I just took the spray nozzle off the end and I stuck it in the end of the transmission line. This is the sort of thing that you do when you don't have awesome tools like a transmission flush pump. If I had one, that would be better, I think, but I don't. So this is what I got. That's what I did. I think I'm going to run a little more through there and call it good. So here's a better shot of my sprayer. You can see it's just got this little handle. It sprays like that. It's decompressed at the moment. Normally on the end of it, see if I can do this one-handed, would be this guy. It's one of those little dispersion units. You know, you might use it to spray pesticide in your yard, or in our case, we bought this to spray vinegar on a carpet that a dog had urinated all over. Lovely, right? It's been sitting on a shelf forever. Now it sprays mineral spirits. Gonna dump what's left of the mineral spirits back in there. I might have used a quarter of the gallon. It's coming out pretty clean. So I'm gonna run air through that line. There. I'm gonna run air through that line now to get all the mineral spirits out, because I feel like mineral spirits are not a thing that I want in my transmission fluid. At least not a lot. So I'm gonna try to flush that out. And then I think the lines are flushed. So yeah. Alright, so the new transmission is here, as you can see. I put my sensor back on there. All the other sensors are new. This shifter, if you can see this in the, I don't know if that's off the edge of the frame. Here, let's see. Can't turn that dang thing. Here we go. We'll just turn the whole tripod. This is the bracket that the cable shifter for the automatic transmission attaches to. Had to move that from the old trans to the new one. Move it back. There we go. Automatic transmission, of course, uses a torque converter. The Jasper transmission comes with new bolts that bolt the, I guess the flex plate? I don't know. Flex plate to the torque converter. They say do not reuse your factory bolts. I haven't compared them yet, but they say the factory bolts could be slightly longer, and they'll ruin this torque converter if I try to use them. So these are the proper bolts, so use them. Back in there. Now, torque converter needs fluid in it. There's fluid in here already, but I don't know if it's enough. So I'm going to pull this off, and I'm going to put some fluid in it. I figured I would show you guys how that works. So the torque converter, it comes with, when you get the transmission, it has this thing bolted on here to hold things in place. I don't know if you can see that, but it's basically just a piece of metal. It bolts right there, just holds the torque converter from falling out during shipping and whatnot. Take that off. There's a bolt here that goes into the housing, or the bell housing here. I may reuse that. I may just use the factory bolts. I don't know. This is just for that dust plate that goes at the bottom half of the thing, the bell housing. So this just pulls straight off. Now, what I did is I positioned it so that this bolt is straight up, because there is a certain, it doesn't have to mate when you put it back on. Torque converters are heavy, and that's why I was pretty sure it already had fluid. And you can see, you probably can't see, but when you look down the center of this, there's fluid pooling down there. It says you should have up to a quart, or a quart, between 1 and 2 quarts of fluid in there. I'm going to add a little more, just to be sure there's enough in here. The last thing I want to do is ruin this thing. So, I figure having too much in there just means it's going to leak out, right? I'd rather have too much than not enough. This is going to spill everywhere. I should probably have a funnel. And, you know, I really think there's enough in there. They say they bench test each one of these transmissions before they send them out, so they must have put fluid in this torque converter when they did so. As I see it pooling down here, it has got to be enough in there. If I put too much more in here, it's just going to come right up the center here. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's enough in there. I don't think I'll be able to show you on the video what it looks like in there, but basically this whole thing is filling up with fluid, and you can see down the center here that it's filling up. So yeah, I think we're good on that respect. Now this goes back in here pretty darn straightforward. It goes onto this shaft here. There's a bunch of splines it has to line up with. And then there's like a J's here. Anyway, it slides right in here. Done. Hey folks, I'm under the Jeep, as you can tell. I got something cool to show you. Notice that? That's a new transmission. I'm going to run through a couple things that we did last night to try to get this thing installed. It's not a thing that it was easy to try to record while we were doing it. Sorry. So I figured I would just give you a rundown. Sorry, it's hard to work under here. Hang on. So up there, you should be able to see the bracket to the left and the other one to the right. Those are Torx bolts that are really tough to get to. But if you attack them from way back here with a whole bunch of extensions, then you can get a Torx socket on there and get them out and back in again, of course, relatively easily. Yay, output shaft. Then there's a bunch of sensors and whatnot to connect. I showed you before there's plugs on either side of the transmission that go to the TCM. This is for the transfer case, so it's not connected yet. These little dimples here, you can see on the end of that clip there, there's a bunch of little points on the transmission, but there's a bunch of those that clip in to keep this wiring harness stable. You see how it's not flopping around anymore? That's because it's all pinned in place. You see one right here. Right there. Right. I'm going to move around to the side of the transmission. Okay, so these here are the plugs I was talking about. They're pretty solid on there now. You'll notice they move a little bit, but that's okay. These are the cooling lines. These little caps have to come out of here. And I think there's O-rings that go in with them. So those get put back in place, I think, with the O-rings. These sensors were on the transmission already. The next thing I have to work on bolting up is this guy here. He bolts back to the side of the transmission. Maybe behind the cooling lines. There, sorry, that was... Yeah, he must go behind the cooling lines. This is the there it is. This is the cable shifter from inside the cab. So the whole thing kind of goes like that. And then these go on top and bottom like that. And there's bolts I have in bags over there to put that back on. I don't know how good you can see this in the video. So I'm going to work on getting that stuff done. I think I'll probably do this. Or maybe I'll get these holes prepped and then I'll do this and then this. The thing I don't know... See these threads on here? I don't know if I need to seal those in any way. I'm going to see if the O-rings, they give you a bag of O-rings along with the transmission. I'm going to see if any of them fit in these ports. If they do, I don't think I need Teflon tape, or not tape. It specifically says in the directions not to use Teflon tape, but it references liquid sealer. But it doesn't say if it's required for this transmission, or this application, or if these are just generic directions. So I'm going to see if those O-rings fit. I'm going to install those. And I'm just going to watch close and make sure that these don't leak. If they leak, I'm just going to have to pull it out, clean these up good, and put some liquid Teflon on them. So that'll be that. Alright, I think that's enough for now. I'm going to try to get these things taken care of. Then I got to put a transfer case on. Okay, other bolts to be aware of. You can see up in there. Those hex-headed bolts up there, those are what attach the flex plate to the torque converter. Okay, so what I had to do to get that lined up, and they're not evenly spaced. Let me find a place to hang my light here, or lay my light, I don't know. It's going to fall into my oil pan, make a big mess. Okay, so see this right here. Right, so what you have to do is when the transmission's lined up, you take these big guys here, they're 5/8, and you put them through the transmission housing into these arms on the bell or the arms on the engine block. Okay, that basically holds the transmission in place. Those two upper ones that I showed you hold the upper bell housing in place. All this down here is basically just here. Okay, there's a dust shield that bolts in here, which I have yet to put back on. But you can see that's like where the starter goes. That's the same sort of material that the rest of the dust shield is made of. Once I get the dust shield back in place, I'll get the starter back on. Okay. So to put these in, there's threaded holes, of course, in the flywheel that these thread into. And I got my fingers into this little gap here, and I was able to spin the torque converter to line these holes up. And what you have to do is get two of them lined up, and then you're probably good. Like I said, they go with like an even odd sort of pattern. Then you can basically turn the whole thing by pushing on these teeth with a screwdriver or something. You can turn the whole flex plate and get them all in. I put some Loctite on them. I think that's the proper thing to do. And yeah, I think we're good to go there. So the next thing I'm going to do is get that dust plate in, get this stuff bolted up, get the transfer case back on. Hey folks, transmission swap day 47. the holes are stripped. The holes in the transmission, the threaded holes at the bottom of the transmission on the tail housing that are used to mount the transmission mount, the bracket that holds the transmission mount, they're stripped out on the Jasper that I just got. I am unhappy. I didn't verify them before putting the transmission in. Transmission is almost 100% installed. I tried to put the transmission mount on and they're stripped. They're freaking stripped. So I've talked to Jasper, I've talked to the mechanic I bought the transmission from, and he says if I can get the Jeep to him, he will fix the stripped bolts, the stripped out holes, and Jasper will pay him to do it. So I need to get the Jeep back together with no transmission mount that I can drive at 20 miles. This sounds insane, doesn't it? I have an idea, and I'm going to show you that idea. But first, I also, it's really been bugging me the way I've flushed the cooling lines. And when I talked to the shop today, he told me to do something a little extra. So when I showed you earlier that I flushed the transmission lines, I took my compressed mineral spirits and I shot them through, and they came out the other end with my little funnel thing that I had devised, and everything was cool. He says I should have shot it both ways, and I should have known that. So I have now disconnected the cooling lines again, even though the transmission's already in there, and I'm going to flush it again both directions with the same mineral spirits, with the same setup I used before, except this time I'm a little more prepared. I bought these little brass fittings. These are 1/2-inch brass fittings with a barbed end that you can put this plastic hose on. So I'm going to put these on my transmission cooling lines, both ends that are at the transmission. I'm going to put hose on them so I can bring them out from under the Jeep. And then I should be able to flush them even better than I did the first time. So, check it out. So here we are. The biggest problem here is that these lines don't give you a lot of room, and you can't really move them much. Kind of like that is about as best you can do. So I'm going to try to get the plastic hoses on there. I didn't think of this while I was at Lowe's where I got these, but you can get these in a right angle fitting, which would have been better. We'll see if I can make this work. I hope so. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to get the fluid in this end and out this end without shooting it all over my transmission, which is really my only goal here. So, alright, it's not beautiful, but fitting, hose. It was tough to get there, and I feel like I had to wrangle with these a bit, but I didn't bend them or anything, so I think we're good to go. That upper hose goes around the top of the transmission. If the transmission wasn't in the way, this would be a lot easier. But it is what it is. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. I just want to get in one end and out the other, and then the other way around. So I'm going to see if I can figure out a way to hook my compressor, the sprayer, up to this hose. And I'm going to push in through here, not through there. And then I'm going to go the other direction. So, wish me luck. Well, folks, I got it to kind of work at least. I took my sprayer and found this little rubber stopper with a hole in it. Stuck it on the end of the sprayer. This will seal well enough with the end of my rubber hose. Not well, but well enough. Let's see if I can prop up the camera so you can see. So theoretically you can see there. I'm going to pump up my sprayer. You'll see there's mineral spirits all over the floor, which is a testament for how well this thing seals, but it is doing the job, so watch. Push it on the end of the hose here. I hope you can see this. And put it up as high as we can, and spray. So it's going in the inlet, out the outlet. It's not as efficient as I would have loved. Certainly not as good as a shop would do, but it's getting the job done. I think my system is flushed well enough. Anyway, I'm going to button this all back together. I'm going to run air through it, like I said in the last video. Basically, get the air compressor with the sprayer nozzle put it on one end and push air through it to make sure all the mineral spirits comes out. Alright, I'm going to get that done, get those lines back on the transmission. Alright guys, I'm going to show you something. You got to promise not to tell anybody. So, like I said, I can't mount my transmission mount. But I got to get this to the shop. So, worst case scenario, I need to get it out of the garage to the street so I can have it towed. Best case scenario, I got to drive it 20 miles to the shop I got to take it to with no transmission mount. I think I have a solution. A little bracket I just recorded me making, that's like a little alignment tool for the transmission mount. There's two prongs that were coming out of it. They go through the transmission mount and into two of the stripped out holes in the transmission housing. And then I have a ratchet strap around the tail housing of the transmission, holding the whole thing in place. This is a bad idea. I can tell you now it is a bad, bad idea. But I'm going to show it to you anyway. What do you think? That's a ratchet strap. You can see, let's see if I can get my arm around here. Here's the bracket I made. You can see it goes up through the holes by crappy welds on there. This goes around the tail housing, if you can see that in the dark here. Around the tail housing, like right where it makes to the transfer case. My plan is that the belly pan will come right up here where it's supposed to, and hopefully, and because this would not be complete without a zip tie, there's a zip tie holding the bracket, the alignment bracket that I made to the transmission mount. These are the holes that are stripped, by the way. So all I have to do is get this to the mechanic tomorrow and let him deal with that. He's going to fix those holes and then bolt the transmission mount on proper. Once it's on there properly, Jeep's fine again. And there you have it, folks. After I got the bracket put together and I got it all ratchet strapped together, I was able to call AAA and have the thing towed, so I didn't have to drive it the 20 miles I was afraid of having to drive it. It was probably a better bet to begin with. The transmission mount did hold together, though. I drove it around the block a few times. That was the maiden voyage of the transmission. The only thing I didn't get a recording of after I got the transmission installed and whatnot was getting the fluid back in there. Then I ran around the block, like I said, and then after I ran around the block, I checked the fluid. It was a little bit low, probably because it had filled up the cooler. And after that, everything seems cool. So, like I said, I had the transmission shop do the bolts. He actually swears that he didn't have to retap anything. He just put slightly larger bolts in it. And there we go. There we go. Now, that didn't seem like it was going to work for me, but I don't know. Whatever. He's the expert. So there you have it. The Jeep is back on the road now, and I've got a nice 3-year, 100,000-mile warranty on my transmission. So, yeah, I hope this video was helpful. I hope you guys got something good out of it, and I hope somebody who's facing the reinstall of a 42 RLE in a 2005 or other year Jeep TJ has learned something from this video. If you guys like what you saw, please give me a subscribe. If you want to head on over to Patreon and send me a little bit of monetary kickback, that'd be awesome. If not, subscribing would be great, because the more subscribers I get, the closer I get to not having to ask you guys for money, because YouTube will pay me for my work. Weird concept, right? Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks.